Welcome back to Morning Express, where we are in now the newsroom, and we're looking at matters environment and the coverage that we give it from the newsroom. And a quick reintroduction of the guests that we have here in studio. In case you're joining us now, we have Ojanji Wandera, Otula Owor, and Reinhard Bonke. Basically looking at our coverage of matters environment. Let me come to you, Ojanji, on the question of whether we need to have specialized journalism and whether there is a platform in our training institutions when it comes to matters journalism on environmental issues.
On the first one, on need for specialization, actually, if you look at business, it's a bit almost in the newsrooms. And you have specialized reporters basically on business. You come to health, you will find people who have come out as health reporters. The moment you see the name, you associate that name with
health or...
Yes. You come to agriculture, the same. Why is it not possible for environment? There's everything good for any reporter or journalist to specialize in a subject. For one, you get to understand your beat properly. And once you understand it, then you also know where to get the information or what's going out or what's going on in your area of specialization. What has been happening in the environment is that it has been the general beat for anybody who doesn't have a specific beat. So that you find that, for example, right now, people are covering, because people are dying because of floods, there has been drought. Now it's a news theme. You don't get any specialized person who has possibly been reporting on drought and floods, or just floods for that matter, on that area, who can give you an insight of the trend, the way it has been, or even try to question the experts who are talking about flooding and everything else. Someone who can give a different story from what's being given. Now, the other thing, again, when you specialize, is that you are able to interrogate the experts. You know, the kind of reporting we have on the environment right now is basically reportorial.
It's basically highlighting what has already happened.
Yes, and what you are told by the experts. But sometimes we have seen many cases where experts give the wrong information.
Right.
If you have somebody specializing in environment, and again, environment it's very broad. But if you just have possibly someone who's different aspects of the environment, right now there's climate change. And I'm glad I'm seeing a lot of journalists now specializing in that area, and they're almost becoming experts on climate change. We have, for example, our story on the rhino. How many journalists are writing about endangered species in this country? If you, for example, if they went to UNEP or they went to IUCN or African Wildlife Foundation, and they wanted this information, they got a scientist, and they were given some information, are they able to interrogate that information and say, no, it's not in line with what I saw at UNEP or what has been going on? It only comes through specialization, and it also comes when now, because when you're specializing, you get to understand your subject properly. Look at, let me give you an example of someone like the guy who does this program on agriculture on Mondays. Here at KTN.
Philip Keitani.
Philip Keitani. Now, Philip Keitani and his counterpart at Nation, the lady of Food Friday, these are people, when they meet agricultural experts,
they have the right questions, and that's because of experience.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on specializing, and whether at the training level there is a platform that can expose journalists to environmental issues that can be highlighted?
Yes, I agree. There is need for a platform that can expose them at the university, because the way journalism, the way it evolved, used to be people who can just write a lot of nothing, play with words, adjectives. That has changed. A lot of people need people with communication skills. So a platform is there, but still, I've worked with people with masters, PhD in environment specialists, but they can't communicate, they can't write, they can't do the kind of things we are doing. So I still emphasize the fact that you have to be a good journalist with interest. Interest is key. For example, you mentioned there's Suswa where there's a crack there.
Yes.
But sometimes back we had some lakes here in Kenya where water just came from nowhere and crocodiles were in the bedrooms. It just went like that. But now it turns out that something is happening, that the Rift Valley plate is cracking. In Ethiopia, they have the same thing. They see certain cracks are there, but the story has been there. So young people, I would have to defend them very much. We have a lot of them. We have an example of a young girl who, from Daystar, came to our place for attachment. And within a short time, she did something on impact of climate change on coffee. And she was one of the 5 journalists picked worldwide to go to attend the last big conference in Paris, just a university student. That can tell you that interest and quality is there.
It's there.
So I don't want a myth where we cannot cover floods properly because we don't have specialized environment water journalists. No.
That should not be the
You
case.
have to be a good journalist. And then solutions to attract people. Journalism is not for the sake of it. The solution journalism we talked about the other time, with floods, what next? What do we do? That's value addition, socioeconomic impact on people.
Bonke, is it possible that stories with environment are not, and looking for a better word to use, but they're not sexy enough to sell? Because with these other stories, either they have a propaganda or they're very attractive. If it's the entertainment world, there's glamour. If we talk about Mau forests, those are just trees and greenery. How do we repackage them to make them as important as they really are?
Yeah, again, the only time, like I said before, that environmental stories appear sexy is when there's a catastrophe. But again, their platform for training where ECI, where I used to work, we have had trainings in the past targeting the African journalists on environmental reporting. But again, environmental issues is very wide. There are very major thematic areas, energy, climate change, forestry, agriculture is very wide. So how about you do it the other way around? Have the environmental student or environmentalist trained person to undergo a media training to become a journalist so that they can speak about what they learned in campus for a period of 2 to 4 years. How about to do it the other way around? Have those people, specialists already, to undergo this training.
Right.
And then the media can use them to create segments and show them how to make the stories sellable or sexy to the government. Because one of the major suggestion or maybe way forward that I see, government makes some major development decisions without involving the specialist. At times we may not blame them. There are no people up there to speak for us. We don't have an environmental champion to push this matter forward. When Wangari Maathai died, I think it all went with her.
Right.
Yeah. So how about if you have these key guys and the media people train them to become journalists, and then we could use these people to speak to the president or the key decision makers on really having the development, but again, a sustainable type of development.
All right. How do we repackage the stories so that you're a journalist, how do you package your stories so that they are, one, relatable to those who are reading, and secondly, attractive, even for sales?
I think one of the things which is there is people impact. You have to put people at the center. And solution, what is there? Like we have had floods. What is there? We're just going to mourn. It is journalists have a responsibility to now look at the institutions that are supposed to do their duties. Like environmental issues, as he says, are wide.
Right.
We have like drought, we have floods, but these are results of certain things that we did not do right. But what's happening in Kenya right now is that the story is that we have so many bodies just regulating, coming with the laws to punish people, not to solve. I'll give you a small issue of even plastics. It was a very good to ban plastic bags.
Right.
But then so what after that? After that, you go arrest a Mama Mboga, 2 million shillings fine. There's a story there. These bodies do not know what to do other than coming with regulations. They are educated people. They should have found ways of either alternatives, recycling, or punish those who manufacture and import these things, but not chase small little people out of these kind of things. And that's where the media comes in, because you're the fourth estate. You're supposed to be the people's eye and ears. And so environment's linked to very many things. It is not standalone. It's linked to economy. It's linked to now law. We have so many laws coming. And one of the issues which we in Kenya need to look at is the media has a lot of issues they can deal with. We have nuclear issues coming here. We want to start nuclear energy things, which is very expensive to start and also very expensive to end. And getting rid of waste will be a nightmare, because Japan, which used to buy waste, does not buy it anymore. US is still stuck. They don't have a policy on how to get rid of waste. They are temporarily somewhere. People may not know that Kenya has nuclear waste, small scale from lab research.
Right.
So there are lots of interesting issues that people can do. But also politics is about development. It's not about shouting who is what. Environment is linked to food production. It's linked to everything. Water. We have an institute of water here, research where they train young people. It could be made, turned into a university. What the ministry does is create boards. Now the counties are copying the same mechanism. Putting me in a board will not solve something on water if we do not, for example, think of how do we trap this water that's going to Indian Ocean now. Because we have just been crying barely a week ago. There's a big story here. Water is going to the Indian Ocean. 2 weeks ago, we were crying about drought.
And about drought.
Nobody's talking about dams. And not just talking, doing
or
it.
even just harvesting water individually. I mean, there are
Yes.
ways that we can also help in terms of a small scale,
Yes.
and it adds up to what the government is
So
trying to do.
you have, as he says, we need specialist people, but not specialists to a point where you think somebody will do you a favor because you are an environment journalist. Editors, stories compete. So first you have to be a good journalist, know the issues, and have people at the center, and have solutions for them. You can show me pictures of people drowning for a week, then I just get tired. That's too much. But if you say, look, we could have put sandbags here. We shall do it next
Solutions.
time. Yes, that's the direction to go.
All right, Janji, your comments and also the fact that, for instance, what he has brought up in regards to plastics. Yes, they have been banned, but do we understand the damage that they do so that we are not just complying because we don't want to be caught, but because we identify and we realize what damage we're actually doing to the environment?
Okay. Before I tackle that, let me talk about something you comment on something how do you make the stories interesting?
Yes.
I want to use our story of the rhino. You know, there are a lot of people the world over who are wondering what is it about a rhino that has died?
What is so important about a rhino that's died?
Is it the only animal that has died?
Yeah.
Eh? You see, and basically, there are many editors elsewhere where you tell them this, they'll be, so what about a dying rhino? Is it the last rhino to die? The issue is you need to interest the public to relate that rhino to the life, the ecosystem life. What does it mean to you and me? For those guys in Kenya, for those guys who, why can't you relate it to tourism? You know, when you talk about tourism, people say, oh, because they know about tourism.
There's some revenue there.
Yeah, there's some revenue there. Why don't you talk about things that relate to the general mwananchi in Kenya? Then they'll start to understand what you're talking about the rhino. Now, your second point was?
It was to do with the fact that do we fully understand the effects, for instance, of plastic? When it was banned, many might not be using plastic carrier bags because they don't want to be caught, but not because they fully understand the impact or the negative impact that those plastic bags have.
Yeah, exactly. Now, and here's where now journalism comes in proper. Because when NEMA issues a ban, and all you do is report about the ban and the fine,
we'll have missed the boat.
You miss everything. You would have missed the point. So a good journalist would look at what has led to the ban. Now, many people, and I'm sure if you are very used to public means, someone just the plastic after finishing with it,
just throw it out.
In that man's mind, that's just another rubbish to be thrown out. So you as a journalist, first of all, you need to educate, let people know what is it that led the government to ban the plastics. Give them examples of the clogged sewages. If you tell people that, for example, people in Nairobi, where we see burst sewages, and you know everybody, when you look at it once, you don't want to look at it twice. The smell. Now, relate the plastic bag, the clogging of the system that causes those things to burst.
All right.
Link it to the environment, the animals. Many livestock people will tell you they have lost their livestock because the animals somehow fed on the bag. Now, the moment you start relating the plastic bag to what everybody comes across in life, then the ban becomes, even the public now supports the ban. They become responsible. What we are trying to say is that, please, let's avoid this reportorial thing. Let's be analytical in our reporting. Let's bring out the bigger picture, not just the thing.
All right. Bonke, how serious is matters environment in terms of if we ignore it, if we don't do anything about it, if we don't take it up as a serious issue that needs to hit the headlines, what dangers are we staring at?
You see, to answer that, I have an environmental principle that what we have now environmentally, we borrow it from the future generation. And what will we give them when we finally depart this world? And again, there's this quote that says that when all water is polluted and all trees are cut and all waters in the and all fish are dead, all animals are dead, only at that point will you realize that you cannot eat money. Yeah. So, like they've said before, I don't see a day or a time when environmental story will sell better than politics.
So are we staring at...
But the only, yeah. Pardon?
I was going to say, I'll ask, are we staring then at a point where we'll not cover it, but it'll come up to consumers at some point?
Yeah, nature pays and hits back very hard. Because, like they've said before, yes, we can, I don't think, still we can make it more sellable and appealing only if we do like a relational case studies. A case of Mau Forest. Back in 2007 or 2008, thereabout, you know, the politicians were calling for it to be cleared and human settlement and all that sort. Now we can see the drought. If we could have a clear package presented to the public of what was happening then and relate to what is happening now. Right now there's a plan to have the nuclear power plant. Kenya is still struggling to deal with the solid waste. How will you deal with that nuclear waste? If you could do a story, maybe in Germany that is doing away with the nuclear power plant and relate it to Kenya, the coal power plant in Lamu. The Chinese themselves are doing away with the coal power plant. They're bringing it here. If you could bring this thing to the public. And
mention how it affects them.
Exactly.
All right. Owor, we'll need to wrap up. Your closing thoughts, and do you agree with him that there's not much we can do to repackage and make the environmental stories more appealing?
No. I think I don't buy that because I've spent most of my life doing these issues, and I believe I've done well, not as a journalist. And there are associations across Africa and across the world of journalists who cover these issues. And you can see how Japanese environment journalists did it, if you belong to World Federation or science journalists. In Kenya here, we have young journalists forming associations, MESHA, and there's another one also, KENSJA. These are associations which focus on science issues. And the scientists are talking. They never used to want journalists when I started. Nowadays, they go to journalists. So opportunities are there. Environment stories will make front page. Floods will make front page. Energy, in fact, I wanted to emphasize this, that the problem we have in Kenya as journalists who follow these issues is the institutions which are supposed to have solutions just escape through regulations and nothing else. And these regulations target poor people. Take charcoal. Charcoal is used in Kenya. You can't do without charcoal. 50 to 60% of our energy comes from charcoal. Then they are demonized when Mao goes down. But you forget that people can plant trees that give charcoal.
Right.
Then the forest officers who are there have a duty. It's not the person in the street. So when they pass a law to punish people, they think they have solved it. No. We can go to other sources of energy, wind, solar. We don't manufacture solar panels. We should do it homegrown. By that I mean homegrown, because imported and all these things. Our parastatals can help a lot, agencies, authorities, to be helping. The floods. Have you seen how people live in the shanties? I always send young journalists to go to the shanties to see how real people live there. How are they coping with these floods there? Can we have people who are experts in housing authority tell them, even if it is mabati, it can be done like this so you don't drown? Because these people are there. They're going to be there for a long time.
Absolutely. All right. Ojanji, your closing comments?
I do agree with Otula that environmental stories can still make headlines. They have made headlines and they will make headlines again. But for them to make headlines, it's unfortunately they have made headlines for disasters. Yeah. But what we are talking about is we want them to make headlines as investigative
and information.
Pieces. Yeah, new information, where someone you are breaking news of something great happening or disaster in making. And this one will only come when you have people who have got a passion to look for the stories. As a matter of fact, there's a lot going on in the environment. As we say, it's broad, and in its breadth, there's a lot that's going on. If you go to, for example, to UNEP, and find out what they are doing in terms of environment, you can just come up with the headlines from UNEP alone.
There's a lot.
There's a lot.
All right. Reinhard Bonke, your closing comments?
Just to address what you said, what I mean by environmental studies not beating politics or sports. What I mean is, like, we cannot really make, it's a serious issue. It's the same way we cannot make health issues, fanciable. If, like you said, and I said that before, make these stories relational, predict a future disaster, use the Mau issue as an example. That's the only way then the local Nairobian will relate to the problem. And that's the only way the media will link us up with the decision makers. That is the only way it will sail.
All right, thank you very much, gentlemen. We'll have to wind up right there. Reinhard Bonke, Programs Officer, Environmental Compliance; Otula Owor, Science Environmental Journalist; and Ojanji Wandera, who's also a veteran science environmental journalist. That's where we wind up the newsroom this morning. But do stay with us right here on Morning Express. We've got more stories making headlines. But also, today's Wednesday, we'll be looking at your health. And with this cold weather, how do you manage your health? We'll also be trying to bust some myths and find out if it's true or fact. Some of the diseases or illnesses that apparently are caused by cold. True or false? We'll be finding out right here on Morning Express.